We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the majority report. We're just getting resettled.
Huh?
Are you there? Oh, there you are.
I just got back. Sorry.
We mentioned earlier that Bernie Sanders, AOC, were in Tempe, Arizona, in front of 15,000 people.
And there was an massive overflow outside too.
It really is stunning. And you're starting to see polls out of a real dissent within the Democratic Party. And to be clear, these polls, 40%, I think it is, this is off the top of my head, 40% want the Democratic Party to be more, to move towards the center. I think it's 29% want to move to the left. I can't remember the third percent. It feels it's just right.
All those people agree with Bernie the way that, in my opinion, like the center moderation stuff, I don't buy.
Well, the thing is that it's very difficult to quantify this, right? I mean, or to qualify it. I mean, I have spoken to people many, many times who have said, I was either going to vote for Trump or Bernie. I have spoken to people who considered themselves moderate Democrats during the Biden years, who supported Bernie over Biden. And I'm like, you realize you're to the left of Biden. And they just didn't know. It's just
that paradigm is not applicable.
Very difficult. But I mean,
liberal
that's
means
why
professional type of stuff, like Hillary saying ending too big to fail won't stop racism. That's what people are reacting against, I'm convinced, in those polls. That's the liberalism that they're rejecting.
Let's put it this way. It's very hard to assess when you start talking about these isms. But when you start talking about issues and you start, and you go issue by issue, there is absolutely no doubt that people are going to align themselves with what AOC and what Bernie are talking about, the vast majority of Democrats. And I would also argue a significant, if not a majority of even Republicans, are going to subscribe to 80% of what AOC and Bernie say in this respect. But the
base wants to fight against the Republicans. That's what the polling reflects.
Okay, yes.
But they're associating themselves with fight. That's a good thing.
Yes. Yeah. Across however people identify themselves ideologically within the Democratic Party, the one thing they all agree on is that we want more of a fight. We want partisanship here.
Right.
And partisanship is the way that you get to the win. That's it. You cannot pursue any of these ideologies. You cannot pursue any of these policies until you're in a position of power. And the one thing that is quite clear is that the Democratic Party wants a party that is going to fight. Here is AOC in Tempe, Arizona.
And let me tell you something. This isn't just about Republicans either. We need a Democratic Party that fights harder for us too. But that means, here's what that means. That means our communities, each and every one of us, choosing and voting for Democrats and elected officials who know how to stand for the working class. And Tempe, I want to give you your flowers for a second, because you all have been working overtime to make that happen. In fact, one thing I love about Arizonans is that you all have shown that if a U.S. Senator isn't fighting hard enough for you, You're not afraid to replace her with one who will and win.
Hint, hint.
Oh, that's not a hint. Well, actually, I want to continue on with just one more segment of that before we do, though. Yeah, she's clearly talking about Kristen Sinema.
No, she's talking, and then, but the hint is me versus Schumer.
Oh, yeah, I guess. But she goes on to specifically hat tip to Mark Kelly and Gallego. And let's be clear here. Mark Kelly and Gallego, at least the way that Gallego has been functioning since he's become a senator, are not terribly aligned with AOC's policies and Bernie's policies. In fact, they could be close to, on the other end, about as close to the other end of that spectrum as you could find. So what's fascinating here is she is, people have talked about her, sort of filing down certain edges and not challenging, the supposed vow she made to not challenge incumbents to get that position in the committee. She is on an agenda to amass as much party power as she can within the context of this party, while maintaining as much of her agenda as she can. I mean, that's what's happening.
And her status as a critic of the party, which when you heard in the audience when she said that there's a massive appetite for overhaul of the party, and she's representing that. I feel like, she's dissected endlessly, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. And one of them just, it does include her gender. But this past month has been a masterstroke. I mean, first of all, the fact that Bernie is still kicking and making this a priority, we have to give him his ultimate credit.
The energy
it's amazing.
Guy has.
He has way more energy than Biden, with just a flashback over 4 years ago to the concerns about his health. But, there's been a lot of discussion of who's the successor to Bernie. Who is it? And I think he's making it fairly clear who he views as at least one of his ideological successors. And he's touring around the country with her. And Bernie did very well in both times he ran with Latino voters. What was the constituency that Democrats lost the most ground with? Latino voters this election cycle, arguably. I mean, they also lost a lot of working class support as well. But who does well with that is with working class voters is also Bernie. And so going to Arizona here at the beginning of this tour, I don't think is an accident. I think they're trying to re-energize that part of the party around the issue sets that both of them represent.
Well, they're hitting all of the swing states. The Bernie was in Wisconsin, I think, earlier, and in.
But AOC starting there, I guess.
She's starting there, or I think she started in Nevada, and they crossed the border the other day. I mean, it'll be interesting to see who else joins them on that tour, if any other politicians. But here's what I found really sort of fascinating. And I've obviously, because he is the congressman from Worcester, Massachusetts, I have been following Jim McGovern's career for quite a while. I don't know how long he's been in Congress, but I want to say 20, maybe more. He was very, very good. I mean, he's, one of those very progressive members of Congress who you don't really hear much about. He was quite good on Latin American issues and U.S. involvement there. But Worcester, I've never perceived as being a particularly progressive place, although things I think are changing there. But here he is. This is a clip of him in, I think it's Greenfield, Mass, which a little bit west of Worcester.
Thanks for that. I was curious how it was in relation to Worcester.
I know people are very concerned about it, but I must admit, I don't know how you get there. But here is Jim McGovern, and I don't remember. I mean, maybe there's clips of other Congress people talking about this, but I don't remember seeing Congressman, and he's not a backbencher. I mean, he sits over. He was, I think, chair of the Rules Committee. He still very well may be. Here's Jim McGovern with a very interesting thing to hear from a longtime elected politician.
We need to start thinking about out-of-the-box ideas like a general strike. It's easier said than done because it requires buy-in by everybody, right? It requires planning. But in Europe, there was a tradition of that. I mean, you saw that in Poland. When the communists were in charge in Poland, when the solidarity movement, was trying to gain traction, it was a general strike that basically, began to show the cracks in the existing government there, led the way for the solidarity movement and Lech Walesa to go to power. We need to start.
There you go.
That's pretty.
That's awesome.
We haven't seen that I don't remember anybody ever talking about a general strike.
No. I mean, we need more labor density. Like, that's part of the issue. And in European countries, they have, higher labor density. But still, that's something I like to hear that coming out of the mouth of a Democrat.
I hope we hear more of that kind of talk. But it also both indicates that there is an understanding that this is going to require speaking directly to the people, that the idea that and the only way you do that is to provide solutions that speak directly to people. And that is encouraging. In addition to the sort of like the sort of more generic, you need to fight. When you orient your power with people, and you necessarily have to have a issue sets that provide that material benefit for people. I mean, it helps you once you get into power. It helps you legislatively.
Yep.
Because you have expectations that are created by those folks.
But that's why I'm so encouraged by what Bernie and AOC are doing here, which it's not, they are marrying their political project of, fundamentally changing, hopefully, our government so that we tax the wealthy more and provide a more robust social safety net and tackle income inequality. They are marrying that with the partisanship that 75% of the Democratic base wants. This is a way more advantageous position than when, Bernie in 2016 was being criticized for not really being a Democrat. These were all disingenuous, but, or being a sexist or whatever, outside of what is acceptable liberal thought. It is not the case right now. Polling is showing that, it's very the margins are so within the margin of error, so it's hard to be too determinative about it. But AOC is definitely seen as one of the future leaders of the party, and Bernie is seen as a leader. And so to be able to make their politics more mainstream for the voters that would be needed in a 2028 primary, like, I couldn't have necessarily foreseen this, but it is very encouraging in a sea of dark news.
Yeah, the news is pretty dark.
Yeah.
Should we do this? Let me read a couple IMs, and then we'll maybe get to this.
Masculinity.
The masculinity. Yeah, we will save that chart. Well, maybe we'll go over that chart, but I wanted to actually let me just do this story. This is a small story. You don't hear about this unless you're sort of like noodling around in government executive and federal news trade magazines. But we got an email from a listener, a very helpful listener, Evan. Just wanted to put it on your radar. Trump's March 14th executive order is essentially killing the Institute of Museum and Library Services. What does the Museum of Library and Library Services do? Well, shockingly, it basically supports museums and library services. It provides technical support for libraries, including last mile broadband connection and network upgrades, electronic catalogs and websites for small libraries, hardware and software support. It provides group purchasing programs for ebooks, e-audiobooks, research databases. If you are a library lover and you have their app, the library app, Libby, which is like a Kindle for your library membership. If you live in a small town, it will likely be going away. It provides library services for the blind and print disabled. It provides library services for people in prisons and juvenile detention facilities and psychiatric institutions. It provides digitization and free access to historical resources in libraries and museums. This is obviously important for researchers and genealogists. This is all stuff that is completely, it seems to me, bipartisan. It provides youth programming, like summer reading programs and other literacy-focused programs for libraries. It provides 24/7 reference services to library users. We got 123,000 libraries in the country, about 35,000 museums. Again, this is a situation where these protections and this support is provided by statute, but of course, DOGE comes in there and they just cut the funding. And this is part of the problem we had with what Schumer did.
Yeah.
Schumer was out there saying, we're going to be shutting, they're going to shut down the government. Well, they're shutting down the government now. And all they're doing is they're cutting these things down to the point where they can't function. Then they're going to take the money and they're going to sort of deploy it in some other fashion. Listener Evan writes, if anything, this agency, which accounts for 0.0046% of the federal budget, is one of the more efficient uses of our tax dollars. Libraries and museums are among the most beloved, trusted, and heavily used institutions in our country. This is what we're facing here. And we got to wait for the courts to catch up. And we don't know if there's going to be a court case where a judge is willing to be the one judge who holds the administration in contempt. And even at that point, like,
they could just disregard it or cease doing what they're doing.
See him enforce it, the Andrew Jackson special.
But cripple it.
Danielle Alexander. Laverne thanking Brad made me tear up.
Oh,
sweet. Carl Barks, notice Merced County, California library is under threat of being privatized. Emma, we need your doctor's note to excuse your absence. Special Lennon, Space Lennon. Teacher organizer, used to be a regular caller with Michael. I have 15 minutes left on lunch and I'd love to do a quick education organizing call, 208 area code. Apologies, I don't think we're going to get to calls today. But we're going to try and dedicate more time to that next week. I know I say that often, but we're still sort of catching up.
Yeah.
We're trying to sort of like, this is part of their agenda, and that is to flood the zone. And we feel it, no doubt. Emma got the Knicks flu from Tracy Morgan, says Small D Democrat. Small D Democrats 2028 strategy, introduce Bernie to Brian Johnson to reverse his aging so he can run again.
I don't want to see a Brian Johnson-ified
honestly,
Bernie.
When you think of the dedication of this guy, like, it's
Is that what you call it?
There's
Mental illness, maybe.
Well, there's no, I'm not talking about Brian Johnson. I'm talking about,
Oh, I see.
about Bernie.
Oh,
Any other senator could do this. I mean, it's not, I mean, like any other senator, I mean, they wouldn't necessarily get the crowds, but any other senator could do it. There's no fund set aside. I mean, it is just a fundamental commitment to politics that I think is indicative of the nature of his politics. Like, I don't think you get this effort, you know. I mean, good for Bennett for basically implying that Chuck Schumer should move down, but you're not going to see someone like Chris Coons go out on tour.
well, especially in the Senate. I mean, this is part of, like, when you don't have to constantly be making calls and begging for money, you can maybe have a conversation with your constituents and get a sense of where they actually want you to direct your energy. And like Bernie has been, I mean, Bernie's just like has always had that connection and is a generational leader who we missed out on. So
Yep.
it's sad, but you know, still fighting the good fight.
Polish onions. Hey, Sam and MR Crew, not sure if you had covered this, but next week, Dick Durbin is partnering with Lindsey Graham to introduce legislation to repeal Section 230 of the Telecommunications Act of 1996. Section 230 protects websites and apps from liability for posts created by users. Repealing it would open the door for censorship and lawsuit onto all websites and would be disastrous for small-scale independent media platforms. Might be worth getting someone on to talk about it. Thanks for all you do. Actually, that's a good idea. Let's look for someone on that. I mean, I am of two minds of this because I think you can repeal Section 230, or what you can also do is make it apply for entities that have X number of viewers, or perhaps entities that are incorporated and have a certain amount of revenue, because there is absolutely no reason why Google or you name it don't have the ability, Facebook don't have the ability to have actual moderators there. I mean, there are ways to essentially inoculate people from what commenters do. But also not necessarily inoculate people from like their responsibilities to moderate or, to produce stuff. Like, I'm curious, like, Spotify going to be responsible for misinformation that it puts out?
Right.
I mean, there is that is one element of Section 30, but I suspect
I would
Polish onions,
prefer
the guests we get on for Section 230 may not be as supportive as you hope that it would be.
I think state regulation through something like the FCC is maybe better than a vast number of lawsuits every which way because of moderation. I would prefer, something like that than just private lawsuits.
The private lawsuits are born out of regulations and statutes that take place. So as you know, Matt, when I go down to Vegas, and I'm not sure I'm going to be going this year, but many of the actions that are taken are based upon, they're civil actions, but they're based upon civil regulations that are promulgated by agencies like the FDA or the FCC, et cetera. Special Edward, 22-year veteran education specialist here. I couldn't be more disgusted than I am today. The thing that makes, I'll write again later. Working mostly with kids on the autism spectrum and students with significant mental health support needs, this move is outrageous. I'm going to call from 4015 code today. Would love to talk to Sam about this. We'll have the opportunity again on Monday to do this. My Mia Pink, MSNBC just announced the Department of Education loans will be administered and payments will be collected by the Small Business Administration. the idea that you can build this agency up from the bottom up seems bizarre to me, but we'll see. Hopeful one. Well, I am hostile to MAGA, but what the hell? Where is a Dem saying that is a lie, or anyone but Bernie? Militant apathy. Have you seen the video of Bibi Netanyahu giving Fetterman a silver-plated beeper?
Yes.
Oh
I
God.
played that yesterday.
He didn't get the gold-plated one. That's for Trump.
You know, I think he got a gold-plated one.
Oh,
I mean, it's also the second time he's done this. He got something like that from Betar last fall, and CARE said, "Hey, maybe don't do funny little jokes about indiscriminately blowing up booby-trap devices on people," and he just decided to take it from Netanyahu too.
And in that video with Netanyahu, he can barely complete a sentence. I'm just like throwing this out there, like, what's going on?
Well, he still has had to use the he still had to use the readers.
The thing that makes it easier for him to empathize with what the information that he's putting into his head. I mean, it's an embarrassment.
But it's weird, like there was an article, the Politico, where they sat down. He said, he doesn't make eye contact, and that there are like blown up photos of the hostages all over his office, and like there's just something. Like I feel like we're all dancing around this subject that like this guy
he's mental
has kind of lost his mind after having this health episode.
It sure
and, like,
feels that way.
The caucus doesn't seem to want to talk. It's not like the Republicans who were I think eager to work with a guy like Manchin. Like I think it's kind of an open secret that this guy's there's something off here. I don't know.
Militant apathy asks, so who should be leader? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I have senators that I like in the Senate, but I don't know who should be leader. But I think the point is that if Schumer gets bumped, there are plenty of senators who are going to do a replacement level job for Chuck Schumer.
Yeah.
And I imagine there are senators who have a better sense of who might be more strategic than others in the Senate, who thinks that way, and who can both, who has the respect of their fellow senators, who can sort of like, whip a caucus into shape. But at the very least, like what Chuck Schumer has been completely incapable of doing is even to sort of like do a Chuck Schumer 2.0 turn. Like he's just, I mean, this is the thing. He screws up in the strategy. Then he screws up in communicating the strategy to his allies. Like there's a problem in what he did that I would agree with, but there's also like just a problem in that the way he did it, he doesn't seem to know what he's doing.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. And, really, this is the biggest test of him in the opposition without having Nancy Pelosi to sort of like provide
do all the work,
provide the guardrails for him.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does feel like, he certainly failed in getting Sinema and Manchin on board for Build Back Better. I don't know if another leader could have done that, but I suspect, obviously you're deferring to Biden when Biden's the president, but I suspect, a different leader would have maybe been able to bring these people along. But it became more explicit in the situation. He's just not up to the task. That's it. He's not manly enough, if you know what I mean. Right, Matt?
Well, that's my main problem with him, yeah.
Here is Jesse Waters, and it's interesting. They I wonder if they're nervous about walls, or if it's just a sort of a generic knee-jerk response to having anybody who getting up and showing some type of fight. But
well, they were upset about the weird stuff when he was deploying it, and then it was effective, and then he was put in the closet, or in the corner rather. Like they are self-conscious about their lack of presence in popular culture, right? So right now they think they're back because Trump's on with Aiden Ross and
He's from the demographic that they think they monopolize in their
Yeah.
mind.
But I do think like they want to be perceived as the cool ones. Everybody wants to look like us. We're the Chads. We're the football players. So when they're mocked for being weirdos, it triggers something in them because they're the bullies. They don't want to be made fun of.
Here is Jesse Waters. This is the guy. Oh, well, we'll talk about it in a second.
Well, his nickname's Tampon. No real man has a
'Cause
nickname
you
like
said
that. Well, that's what it is. I'm sorry. I didn't make it up. He wants them in boys' bathrooms. Real men don't talk about how they can beat other guys up. They don't talk about how
Pause it for a
masculine they
second.
are.
Just to be clear,
Maybe-
his nickname is not Tampon. Any more than Jesse Waters' nickname is, date rapist.
Gets
It's
punched
just
by
not
Ryan Grimm.
there's not a nickname.
Tire slasher.
Good.
Well, no, but also I'm sorry. He wants to say real men. What did he say there? Real men don't get beat up.
Let's go back and let's.
I'm just curious if Ryan Grimm has anything to say about this.
make it up. He wants them in boys' bathrooms. Real men don't talk about how they can beat other guys up. They don't talk about how masculine they are. Maybe if you're a professional fighter, you can do that, but I don't know people that do that, and I know a lot of tough guys, like this guy, Greg Gutfeld. I have rules for men. They're just funny. They're not that serious. Like, you don't eat soup in public. You don't cross your legs, and you don't drink from a straw. And one of the reasons you don't drink from a straw is because the way your lips purse. It's very effeminate. And his excuse was, well, I was drinking a milkshake. Again, you shouldn't be drinking a milkshake. Milkshakes are for kids.
They're delicious.
No. Well, his nickname.
Do we have these pictures?
Look at you. Did you send me him somewhere? I'm looking.
I'm
for
gonna
Look at how ladylike I look with the straw.
First off, the all we hear from the right is this notion of defining what constitutes manliness. I mean, the entire Daily Wire crew of men. Oh gosh.
Oh my
Look at that
gosh.
effeminate way his lips. That's
Is that a beautiful woman in front of
Yeah,
him?
I can't tell. What is he? Is he gender bending right now? Like,
Yeah.
what's going on with his pursed lips? I don't know how to orientate myself.
What's his
right now.
drag name?
But this is, this is all part of their project. Like the idea of trying to make Tim Walz seem girly. And as if this is like it does two things, right? One is appeals to their sort of to the insecurity that people who follow Jesse Waters about their own masculinity, and the way that they do that is by sort of like trying to sort of define others as being insufficiently masculine. But it also does the double work of like denigrating women,
Yeah.
right? Like, this is a problem that he does girly things.
Well, that's why trans women are such a threat to them, right? So
100%.
like that's because they view, and why they focus less on trans men is because, okay, masculinity is the dominant thing. We're very comfortable with the idea that that's who you are inside, or that you would want to be us. But if you want to be a woman, it also is the anxiety on the other end that they may be attracted to a trans woman and not know about it. So like so when they come up with all these ways to police their behavior to act more masculine, it's because they're constantly thinking about it. And that means that you have an insecurity there, right? Like, most people who are comfortable in their masculinity don't have to create these boundaries and anxieties for themselves about how they eat food or drink a beverage because they're comfortable with it.
It's also a direct assault on the validity of the patriarchy, or you could just say the hierarchy that comes from this, that ultimately comes from Christian, or comes from religious fundamentalism. because you don't hear that much about trans men, because there's a implicit sort of notion of like, well, of course you want to be a man.
Yeah.
Because that's higher on the hierarchy. But if you are a trans woman, you have given up you have said that your status as a man is not as important as what you feel inside you. And therefore it diminishes the status of men. It is saying that like your privilege there, you're discounting the privilege that you received as a man, and you've rejected it. And then it begins to, the idea is that there isn't necessarily an inherent, or should be an inherent, privilege in being a man within the context of society.
I think this also has a little bit to do why this stuff is more prevalent now is the internet. I think like online platforms are really good at using or teaching creators how to use anxiety to maintain engagement. So it's the same thing with like anti-vax stuff is really popular because like, oh wow, am I poisoning myself secretly? It's like how local used to do the things like the thing underneath the sink that might kill your kids. You need to check this out. But now it's like very, very common anxiety, especially in young men, like body counts. And that's in young women too, but like, which is, how many people have you slept with?
Reverse,
sort of anxiety.
usually.
And this is the exact same thing. It's like, when did you lose your virginity? And is there something wrong with you because you're under socialized in a world where it's not conducive to socialize. And so everyone does have a lot of anxieties like this. It's horrible that, people like Jesse Waters, who, I don't really consider him much of a man. Whereas Tim Wall is literally, football coach, maybe wasn't the head coach, but whatever. And
veteran
in a rural school, as a teacher leading, or at least helping out the gay straight alliance. Like, I'm sorry, that's impressive to me.
But they don't want masculinity to be that positive vision of masculinity. They want it to be the one that's exclusionary and that basically upholds their kind of vision of dominance. It's just like, we're in that period though where there are these online influencers who are selling snake oil to young men, Andrew Tate in particular, but it's all these other kind of branches off of that where they're selling them all of these rules and rigid ways to act as a man and how a woman will respond to you and how she has to act as well. And then they go out into the world and they try to put this stuff out there and apply it to their social interactions. And it alienates them further because women, got to say right now, not happy with the Trump administration broadly, especially young women who you may be dating, and may not like all these rules that you're placing on our interactions about how I'm supposed to be. This should be a more shared relationship. So then the young men get rejected and they go back and they pay for more. And it's this cycle of addiction.
And their resentment builds.
And
the resentment towards it because it's easier to blame the women than themselves in that instance.
Right. As opposed to zooming out and looking at women as human beings that you're having a co-equal relationship with, they sell them this false sense of empowerment. It further alienates them from women and other people, and they keep coming back for more. And like, I do think the right is trying to capitalize on this, and they have been successful and I think it's culminating in this like really horrific misogynistic backlash moment and really Me Too backlash moment that they have galvanized around.
It's a scab picking, and it's like a self-licking ice cream cone, because what happens when guys like say take on these lessons from a Jesse Waters type or a Andrew Tate style, like you said, it further alienates them from other people. But that's good from the Andrew Tate perspective, because if you're not out with a woman, you're going to be back home watching the stream.
Yep.
And we should say polling reflects this. I mean, Trump is severely underwater with women.
He's like giving a White House tour to everybody that's ever been accused of rape. Conor McGregor was there this week. His alleged victim had to have her tampons surgically removed.
The only set of he's severely underwater with college educated women of all races. He is up with women without a college education by a small amount. I can't remember exactly the amount. He is way up with white men who are not college educated, slightly up with white men who are college educated. Every time they do this, this is their political, like the idea that the Democrats, or just broadly speaking, there's any type of identitarian politics. The entire Republican project is an identitarian, identitarian politics. I mean, that is the one foundational thing. What is the one principle that they've had over the past 10 or 15 years in terms of like even voters? What has been the defining thing that they have attracted? Is it deficit reduction? That went away. Was it?
I mean, you could say tax cuts for the rich, but
yeah, but I mean, I think like the broadly speaking, people are against the tax. They don't come out and say tax cuts for the rich. They're not. They will do it. We can see the data that shows what they're, but they deny that that's the case. I mean, even those, the people at Jubilee they weren't coming saying we need tax cuts for the rich, although one or two started to head in that direction. But for the most part, they were like, everybody's getting tax cuts. It's just an anti-government fervor. The one thing that has been consistent has been this notion of hierarchy, whiteness, and maleness. I mean, that is the one consistent pitch that has existed throughout the whole thing. Doesn't mean that every person who votes for Trump is a white nationalist misogynist, but it does mean that is the core in which their principles emanate from, not the individuals. I'm talking about the political movement.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, that core proposition has to be translated and mutated slightly and watered down enough so that it's more palatable by the time it reaches their ears. So, it could be trans women in sports. It could be, women just, refusing to go out with guys, incel culture. It could be in the form of, abortion, on and on and on. But that the core from which it emanates from, that rock that hits that puddle or that pond and the ripples go out, the ripples become less defined as the further they out, but they come from the same place.
Yep.
All right, let's do one more clip, and then I'll read a couple IMs and we'll get out of here. Because it's fun to watch people, regardless of where they are, getting booed because of Elon Musk. Tesla's stocks are down, and it's really like the entire Trump administration very upset.
Oh yeah,
that Tim Walz would talk about stock being down, and they're out there promoting it. And
how could you go against an American company?
I mean, Ro Khan is saying similar things too. So.
Absolutely, of course he is. Yep. Bread still needs to be buttered, but it is interesting that there is this level of proactive defense of Musk's interests, because what we've seen by this administration is over and over again punishing people to make an example of them. The reason why they're going after Mahmoud Khalil, or they're going after some European French scientist who said something in a group chat on his phone, against Trump or something like that. They're going because they want to intimidate people.
Yep.
And they want it, the notion that power goes in one direction, and we wage that power on you, and you don't want to be that person. We just saw this with this big law firm, this big white shoe law firm that Trump had threatened to go after because they had represented, I guess, some people in
Yeah, so one of their former partners was a part of the investigation into the hush money case with Stormy Daniels, and Trump issued an executive order basically going after Paul Weiss. Paul Weiss is also a democratically aligned firm, and they basically caved and threw their former partner under the bus, and then also agreed to
do like $40 million worth of pro bono work for the administration.
Yeah, I mean, look, these big law firms, the partners are certainly overpaid, and there's a ton of problems. But some of the positive things that they do is they allocate a specific part of their money for pro bono cases where, like, you know, say they want to work with someone who's wrongfully imprisoned in Louisiana or who has his life in prison, needs to get out. Like, that's what those resources are supposed to be for. And the Trump administration is trying to direct this firm, and it seems like they've caved to reallocate $40 million instead to those kinds of things, but to anti-Semitism, which basically means cracking down on protests against genocide.
So it is nice to see the power flow in a different direction and increasing animus towards Elon Musk, and to watch it begin to create some measure of fear. And it's unclear to me, you know, what drives that fear. But you don't get the Commerce Secretary coming out, you know, decrying the failure of people to love Tesla. You don't get people going like, I thought liberals liked electric vehicles. Well, there's other electric vehicles.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, he doesn't you don't have to like all electric vehicles. The whole point of wanting electric vehicles is that they just become cars. And, you know.
Elon Musk, sorry, there's more choice in the marketplace now.
There's not really. Wait till Americans find out that we're not even allowed to buy the best electric cars in the world right now because of protectionism. But
here is Representative Harriet Hageman. She is a Republican from Wyoming, in Laramie, Wyoming. And here she is just like, I mean, patently lying about what's going on with Social Security. There are two things that are going on with Social Security. We'll talk about that in a second.
Resources Committee. I worked for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, helping Wyoming family farmers deal with drought until I was fired a month ago in the mass firings, and despite only having the highest marks in my performance review. In a state where so many farmers rely on government programs for drought and disaster relief, Trump's plans to cut these programs and the people who administer them, coupled with the tariffs, will decimate Wyoming farms and rural communities. What are you doing about that? Disagree. I disagree. I come from the ag community. I'm well aware of what kind of programs are out there. It's so bizarre to me how obsessed you are with federal government. But here's the thing.
Aren't you in the federal government?
She
dumbass?
is a federal congressperson, a federal lawmaker.
I love the person in the crowd saying, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah, right.
That was an amazing, like, why did you hold a town hall?
Yeah, because the federal government affects our lives. That's what we're literally telling you, you idiot.
It's like
Can you please go back to not paying attention to what I'm doing?
Yeah, it's like you're working security at a museum. You're like, there's a robbery, and you're like, why? I don't know why you guys are so obsessed with the paintings.
Yeah.
I'm well aware of what kind of programs are out there. It's so bizarre to me how obsessed you are with federal government. But here's the thing.
Oh my God.
So alone up there too in that spotlight.
Yeah, in like shrouded in darkness.
All DOGE is doing sorry. You're
Oh, you're getting
hysterical.
so emotional. You're
Oh, you
getting
have
so
Trump-
emotional. You're
Trump
having a
derangement?
nervous breakdown. You people in the audience are having a nervous breakdown. So emotional. Where's that
Calm
drop?
down.
Where's that drop, Matt?
Sorry, which drop are you looking for?
You are having an emotional breakdown.
Oh yeah, hold on.
All right. Yes.
All right. It's a little bit late now. Damn.
All right. Well,
Somebody's already thinking it's Friday.
it is Friday. He was be correct in that assessment.
All right, let's just keep rolling the video.
That's actually all we had there. They ended
Okay.
there.
Oh.
Wow. It was
First of
nice.
all, let me just make it clear what's going on with Social Security. There are two things. One is they are now requiring new claims and fixes on claims where you need to prove your identity. They are no longer allowing you to do it via phone. They are no longer allowing you to do it via phone. They are anticipating tens of thousands of more trips to Social Security offices, which means now also contemplate who's asking for this. It's old people, definitionally. There may be some widowers, there may be some orphans, without a doubt, but old people are going to be the biggest cohort of people who are now required to not do this over the phone, to actually go to a Social Security Administration office. Simultaneously, they're closing dozens upon dozens of Social Security offices. So they're not only adding tens of thousands of new people that they're requiring to come into the office, which is going to slow things down. They're then closing a bunch of offices, which is going to further increase the density and how crowded these offices are and make it that much harder to administer Social Security. So they're not cutting Social Security. They're just making it harder to administer, which means as a practical matter, that they will be cutting Social Security, that people will get less claims. People will get less payments. There is no doubt about it. There is no doubt about it. And more than likely, the people who will be losing out on these claims are the most vulnerable. The people who have the fewest resources. And then the other thing that they're apparently doing now is because of a court case that says we're not going to allow DOGE to have access. The DOGE appointed acting administrator of the Social Security Administration is basically saying we're going to have to shut down the whole system because, everybody here is aligned with DOGE. So if you're not going to allow an aligned with DOGE person to access this information, nobody can access this information at all. We have to shut down the whole system. So this guy's engaging now in essentially, some type of, court nullification or something.
And it really is, cutting off the nose to spite the face. Like University of Wyoming is in Laramie. You just do a search for NIH funding there. They have a guy who was actually had a high role, looked like David Fay, in sort of assessing grants and stuff like that. I guess Laramie will have to make do without the biomedical research department now. I'm sure they can make up with that with, a Culver's and a Chipotle or something.
And part of the reason why I feel so strongly about getting some type of Senate leadership that is willing to fight is you have all of this energy out there, all of this anger. And if it is not perceived that there are people who are taking action as a response to that on their own side, this energy at one point burns out. There has to be a sense that this energy is not just we're not here to just vent. That the anger and the energy that is being expelled is put to use as
Right.
opposed to just here to express, distress.
Right. And that's what I don't love about this focus tested abundance thing. I know it's kind of, online stuff, but I want this energy to be maintained within the progressive movement, and not just kind of the same people rebranding their politics. Like, this is just a rebrand of what Kamala Harris was supporting in many ways. Some of the stuff.
I think there was such a sort of like a vacuum there that I feel like this was a sense of an attempt to sort of come in and do that. But this is, I mean, I think Jamel was right in that there does not seem to be a political, broadly speaking, an outside game to this abundant stuff. There's no people going to be going to these, Republican town halls and going, we want to pursue the abundance agenda. That's not going to happen.
I hope so. Right.
But I think it's geared towards getting Democratic lawmakers and the consultant class and others to embrace this agenda so that they get their version of and again, I think it was this push was, they anticipated that Harris would be the president.
Would have won,
now.
Sure.
But we saw the same thing with Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
The antitrust people were gearing up for a Clinton administration. And I think Warren would have had that type of influence in the Clinton administration that she had in the Biden administration. And then it was just, they were back out at sea. But
I'm sorry though. It's just, we have a finite number of things we can be focusing on as a party right now and directing our energy towards. And that's just the thing I object to, which is just like, I don't like, no lessons learned. Let's go back to this kind of cutesy focus tested thing where we could all be kind of going to a grassroots orientation now. And it just feels very out of date. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think.
It points to
go ahead.
It points to the lack of connection between the base of the party and the actual people making decisions that are listening to Ezra Klein about this. And if they actually continue to make decisions, sure, an abundance agenda would be better than a sort of half austerity agenda or whatever. But it's going to. They already talk about like leaving labor out, and I just it's not going to go anywhere.
Oh yeah,
the encouraging thing is that if this is the right flank economically of the Democratic Party, then things have been moved.
Yeah.
And so that is encouraging.
Well, that's the thing. And Quinn Slobodian's kind of talked about this when we had him on last year. But the old era of the government can't do anything in the economy and we just need to have free markets, that's over. Neither side believes that. Trump is doing trade wars with the sort of explicit intention to make people's lives better. He can't do it that way, but the economy is political again.
That's good.
Sent with lasers. Can I get a shofar from my wife, who is testifying right now in front of Washington State House regarding reproductive rights in our state? Oh yes, absolutely. This goes out to your wife. Okay, 5 more. We're late. Mastron. This is not a conservative government with principles. It's a post-truth populist regime. What works in the moment to reach their goals is what they will apply. Maybe as a political, sort of like a political messaging thing, but what they're doing is a movement conservative government. Joe, happy Friday. Join the IWW. Left is best. 3 more. Just a Taylor. National Association of Letter Carriers strike this Sunday, March 23rd. Hell no to dismantling the Postal Service. Head to their website for locations and meetup times. Oh, well, can we put that on the blog? Matt, just include this.
Yep.
Do you have it?
Oh, you got a link there?
I'm going to send you there it is. I'm going to IM you that. All right. 2 more. Sun's out, guns out. AOC and Bernie must use this moment to institutionalize this energy in the same way as Huey Long did with his Share the Wealth clubs. I would call them work and production clubs. Not as catchy, but I like the idea. And the final I am of the week. Ryan from Rochester. The entirety of the medicinal pharmacology sciences that we have today is the result of central planning and funding through one government or another. Capitalism does not take the credit for the existence of a single form of modern medicine. Even the shitty concept of legal patents is a form of central planning to forcefully encourage innovation beyond just profit. Yep. Well said. Matt, Emma, great job today. I mean, this week. Folks, see you on Monday.